Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Bold Breakthroughs with Business Experts. My name is Catherine Ann Clayton. I am your host today, and I help professional entrepreneurs launch their own business, make their own money, and create their own time freedom through working out processes, creating, businesses that they love, or if they already have a business, learning how to level up that business and start making profits. So today I have a very special guest. I'm very excited. His name is Isaiah McPeak, and he is in the neurosciences. He's in a little more about the mind. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce y'all to Isaiah. And Isaiah, would you go ahead and tell everybody who you are and how you help people?
Sure. Thanks for having me today. So I have a really strange, varied background. I don't even know how to answer the "what do I do" American question.
Uh-huh.
But by day, I've done a lot of tech startup kinds of growth businesses after being an intelligence analyst. Go figure, doing government stuff. So, and then by night, I've been a communications coach for probably 16 years now, mostly with high school students, and then bridging into CEOs, campaign managers, politicians, and professional authors. So the underpinning of all that, though, has been deepening my own exploration of two things. One is classical rhetoric, which has kind of this ancient twist on being able to think deeply enough to deserve to speak, instead of communication being about how put together you are. And then neuroscience, which is how to drop guard effectively with those who are listening to you, and order and sequence and arrange so that you can build trustful communication and relationships, instead of succeeding through, let's say, domination or perfection or some other intention besides what's in the best interest of both or all three parties involved in communication.
It was so interesting to me about you is that when we first started talking, you were like, I don't know, if I can talk about this. And I was like, no, you can. I mean, I just have recently dove into, or whatever the word is, I always mess up, about the neuroscience and your
Uh-huh.
brain and how you can control it and how you have the thoughts. And you brought up a thing about perfectionism and procrastination, and I have that disease. So I know that through neuroscience and through retraining your brain, you can
Yeah.
change that. So, how important do you think uh, tweaking your brain and fixing your brain is to growing a sustainable business?
I think it's at the core of it. I really do. I think that what holds people back is kind of that famous coaching equation. I think it's from the inner game of tennis, I believe, where it's that your potential minus interference equals your actual performance. And for our ability to grow in a business, we have to have our performance as close to our potential as possible, right? And
Right.
it's usually things stuck in our brain or disconnected in our brain that keep us from performing, both at a business level and at a personal level, which is why we have to understand it for our kids. We have to understand it as parents in our relationships. And so I'm really seeing brain science as the unifying key to both business growth and personal and relational growth, which explains kind of what businesses I'm in.
Right, right, absolutely. I believe, and tell me if you agree with me. I believe that it that even though that I'm a business owner, I believe that also your family relationships and the way that you believe in yourself and your inner self is really directly coincides with how your business is growing or doing or whatever it is doing, because you've got to really be brain centered on what you do personally so that you can achieve in business. Did that make sense at all, what I
It
said?
it totally does. I think it's like this. I think that relationally you can survive or you can thrive. And the same is true in a business. You can survive or thrive. And someone could be making $70,000 a month on a personal business, but not be thriving. And someone who's only making 5K a month, but is thriving, they're actually winning that game in my book. And it's the same relationally, right? You can have all the things, or the reason you had those things was so you could really connect with your family, and you could maybe enjoy life and connect with your family. instead. And so it's like kind of shifting the currency from external to internal on both fronts to really find the path to succeed. And then the weirdest thing happens, which is you kind of end up with both, I think, when you really are genuinely connected internally and being effective at your business. Well, you're going to connect better with customers. You're going to make smarter decisions that have long-term payoff. You're going to play in a different league of executive relationships, networking, and so on. And that those factors over time together end up in a much higher place. With less brute force.
I couldn't agree with you more, because I will tell you, I was in a corporate job before I jumped into the entrepreneurship space, and I was making a lot of money. I mean, we could do whatever we wanted to do, whenever we wanted to do, buy whatever we wanted. However, I was hustling, and I was working 60 to 70 hours a week. But I really wasn't, like you said, thriving. Financially, it looked good on paper, but my relationships with my kids was gone. My husband and I, we laugh about it now, but we really spoke in passing. I would come in, we would sit down for dinner, just because that's a thing that we've always done as a family. We sat down for dinner, but I was always talking about the next thing I had to do, and I couldn't do this because I had to do this, or I had to do that. And I wasn't really present with my family. Now in the entrepreneurship space, I'm not making that much money. I'm making money, but I'm not making what I was making in corporate. And however, my relationships with my kids are thriving. In fact, yesterday they told me, they said, Mom, what is why all of a sudden are you doing this, that, or the other? This brain thing's really kind of working, and you're like happy all the time. And I was like, well, that's how it's supposed to work. So if somebody wants to really jump into this whole brain thing and how it can help your business and how it can help you thrive, as you say, where would you say that people would start?
Ooh, that's a great question, because I will say I have soaked this up through osmosis in probably 7 or 8 different sources. So if I had to tell someone to start with a business focus, because that's usually what's going to suck you in, is you're going to look at it from a business focus. As your eyes open, you're going to take a left turn and say, I want to look at this personally too. So from the business angle, I would recommend something like there's a national organization called Action Design, and it's one of the it's kind of got roots in Stanford's Brain Science Lab and BJ Fogg and his behavioral model. They're calling it now behavioral, and then insert other words: behavioral economics, behavioral design, that sort of thing. But it comes down to how do we in business act in conjunction with how humans naturally behave and are motivated, instead of trying to challenge it all the time. So you can pick up a lot of the brain science and growth psychology there. But then if you want to take a turn into the personal, I mean, I think America's Therapist right now is Brene Brown, and any of her books are a great entry point, or her podcast, if that's more what you're into this space. And then if you want to go really deep, there are more religious-based meets neuroscience organizations out there. Like one of my favorite is called Life Model, where they've actually worked with deep trauma victims, and they've actually built out these 19 brain skills that everybody needs, and methods for you to figure out which ones you're missing, like were you the apple of somebody's eye between 0 and 2 years old, and if you weren't, these are probably the things that are affecting you relationally. This is what that means for your brain, and here's how to retrain it, and here's a model and taxonomy for looking at that. So those are some of the starting points. For me, I could probably spit off more, but as I actually work on our project now, which is designing this phone for kids, those are the sources that I'm pulling on most heavily for how do we create technology that has experiences we would want to pass on to our children, instead of the experience you and I mostly have of being constantly overwhelmed, over-notified, and distracted. So
you talked about the one thing that
I don't know if that made any sense.
That does make sense. It does. The life model thing is really interesting. I wrote it down. I'm going to go look at it. But the one thing I wanted to talk to you about was what you brought up today. So I'm glad that you brought it up. Is y'all are
Mhm.
creating a phone for kids. Now, a couple of things I want you to do first. I want you to tell us about us, but I want you to define kids. Are we talking,
Okay.
I mean, age? You know what I'm saying? Because I think
Yep.
my kids are kids, but my mother is like, they're not kids, they're almost adults. They're 14 and
Right.
16. To me, they're still kids. So talk to me about this phone that you're creating. What was the inspiration in it? And what is it going to do for parents to help parents?
Okay. So first of all, for us right now, kid means I'm learning about this market and the lingo that's used, and it's real easy for us to say, baby, infant, toddler, and then there's this weird zone that starts at about 6 and ends at about 12, where we're not really sure what to call that, and then it
Right.
becomes, preteen, tween, and then teenager towards the end of that. We mean by kid about 7 to 12. So that weird zone where you almost have to just say what age, but we don't want to do that because you can have a 12-year-old in a 9-year-old body, and you can have a 6-year-old in a 9-year-old body because of developmental stages are most off at this part of life.
Yes.
And so, it's weird. So anyway, but for that age group, I think as parents, most of us are terrified of giving our kid a smartphone, and our plan is wait until as long as possible.
Yeah, that was my
And
plan, and that's what we did.
yeah, that's a lot of people's plan. That was my plan too, until actually close to this time last year, when my co-founder Dane approached me and he said, "Look, my 7-year-old's best friend just got a phone, and we think it's crazy, but it's a weird dynamic." And so I've been researching and actually spent a lot of money on market research on this question because I saw an opportunity here to say, what if we could teach kids technology instead of having this resentment and argument with them for 5-6 years of our lives, where the primary conversation is about when can I have a phone. What if we could actually make a healthy phone that you would be proud to teach your kid tech, and you'd be crazy to not teach your kid technology, right? Because your plan
Right.
really is wait until they're 16 and throw them keys to a car and say good luck.
Oh,
So I was
I
captivated.
never thought about that, but that is true. That's what we do.
Yeah, I mean, that is what we do. It's the later ages don't make as much sense, but it's sort of like giving your kid a 6-pack when they turn 21. You're like, all right,
It's
now
time to drink. Yeah.
it's time. Yeah, and that's not really a sustainable plan. That doesn't teach something. And there's a little bit of that whole there's other factors at play, like dangling something in front of children for a long time. And so one of the things that I did was a study with about 16 kids and just ask them, what really do you want to use a phone for? Now let's take games off the table. Okay, let's assume you can play games somewhere else through whatever rules your family has for them. Now, what do you think parents do on their phones all day? What do you want to do on your phone all day? And their number of things is pretty low, to be honest.
Yeah.
And their guesses as to what parents are doing are pretty funny. So there's like a piece of it where now that my kid has one of our prototype phones, she doesn't hardly ever touch it because it's only a tool and not a toy. And the only things on there, like, you're not going to stare at your screen and become a screen zombie by learning musical intervals, which are on there, or doing your science journal for hours on end, or doing a ninja focused meditation, for more than 15 minutes. So if we have the right tech on there that's not addictive and doesn't pull you in, now I don't have to argue with her anymore about whether she can have a phone or when she can have a phone. And I'm helping teach her how to use a phone well and not let it dominate your life while she's still impressionable, still likes me,
Right.
That's part of what's
sure. Savor those moments.
Right.
Yes, because we're at the age where my daughter, who's 16, still likes me. My son at 14, mom's not as big, he is not my biggest fan, that is for sure. But that goes ebb and flow. And it's interesting about this phone because I like, so it doesn't have things like my kids Snapchat all the time. I don't get Snapchat. I don't understand Snapchat.
Mm-hmm.
All I know is that it can take really good pictures to make you look pretty or whatever, silly or whatever. But they're on it all the time. That's how they text now. So on
Right.
your phone, it has none of those kinds of apps on there.
None of
And
those.
I think if you
No.
start at your age at 7, they won't be used to having those apps.
That's right. And what we're trying to build them, going back to the neuroscience and why we built a therapist council behind this and are implementing actual therapist brain science recommendations for kids into technology, is there's a difference between social media and genuine connection. And that's sort of the problem. Is there's just like when early blogging came out, you remember this, people thought, kind of like in the old days, if you have a business card, you're in business. People thought if I have a blog, then people are going to read it. But distribution is not the same thing as production, right? Well, the
Right.
same thing's true with our social profiles. I think there's this idea that other people are having these great lives, and if I could post some things too, then I would get a lot of attention. And it's usually just an ongoing disappointment after disappointment
Absolutely.
after dopamine hit, that even if you do have a post that has 500 likes, you can't remember what it was or why a week later. It doesn't last in biological terms, that it's all dopamine and no serotonin. It's not truly relational and connected. And so the vision here is to help children use technology in ways that build real relationships and have genuine connections forever. And there's no stranger idea of broadcasting out to people and them all seeing it, but actually just starting with friends and family and building your circles to your soccer team and so on, always keeping it real and relational.
So that is that's very interesting. Now, I want to, people out there, I have a lot of moms that are out there. I have, moms of my age kids, older kids, younger kids, grandkids and stuff. How can people get in touch with you if they're interested in looking at this phone? Is it ready, or when is it going to be ready for, I know you said prototype. When's it going to be ready to be marketed, or when people can get in touch with you so they could get that for their kids?
Yeah, so real pulling back the curtain on entrepreneurship here. Yesterday, my co-founder and I decided we're switching from $1 reservation to now we're going to allow people to have public beta. So we've been having a private beta going on, and then you could reserve if you were a stranger to us, essentially. But now we're flipping it to, you can join now, but understand there's still a few kinks in the software, but you can influence that. So things like sometimes the modes don't switch quite right, or it doesn't seem like a template to match your kid's life. If I have free play mode, school mode, night mode, that sort of thing. Well, there's more to it. Anyways, the point is we're going to public beta now, and you can look at that at pinwheel.com, or you can email me at Isaiah@pinwheel.com, or we're still in that phase where we want to learn from every single user until I can't stand another email, which I don't see that happening for at least a year. As a founder, being close to the people who are actually using our product is the most important priority for me. And I'd rather hire people to operate other parts so that I can stay connected to the real users.
Right. That's awesome. So for my audience out there, and they know this, if you watch my show, if you're new to my show, you won't understand this. I have pulled together some really good business experts. Isaiah is here. He's going to help you with a phone for your children that is safe for them, that is safe for their brain. And Isaiah, once the video loads up, I'm going to have you go into my page and put those links to you. You can put the Pinwheel website, and then you can put your email in there. And then I as well have a free gift for you today. It is my 5-step formula to closing more sales without being salesy. And I'll put the link in there. But guys, take advantage of these freebies. These things can change your lives, especially with our guest today. It can change your children's lives and their trajectory of where they're going in the future, and how they can learn to be responsible with all this social media that's out there. So I want to thank you, Isaiah, for being a guest today. And
thank you.
And everybody, thanks for attending the Bold Breakthroughs with Business Experts, and we will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.